Imagine that you are about to launch a product, essentially investing your entire life savings, and your first focus groups unanimously tell you that the product tastes like medicine, and they absolutely hate it. It's like the worst feedback you could possibly receive. I mean, in today's hyper-analytical, data-driven startup culture, you'd kill the product, cut your losses, trust the metrics, and just walk away. Yes, that is what any rational person would do. But in 1987, an Austrian marketing executive named Dietrich Mateschitz looked at this disastrous data, completely ignored it, leaned on a strategy book written during the Great Depression, and ended up building a $2 billion empire anyway. Today, we are discovering exactly how he did it. This is honestly the ultimate stress test. Testing core success theory against modern, ruthless capitalism. Because as someone constantly trying to grow, you probably hear a lot of generic, cliché advice about entrepreneurship, daily habits, morning routines, productivity hacks. But the reality of building a category-defining empire is rarely found in an Excel spreadsheet. And that is our mission for today's deep dive here at Catalyst Power. We are bypassing the superficial clichés. We are synthesizing Napoleon Hill's 20th century principles of success, specifically his landmark books, Think and Grow Rich, and The Keys to Success, and mapping them directly onto the real-world rise of Dietrich Mateschitz and the global powerhouse we know today. As Red Bull, we've curated a truly fascinating stack of resources for you. On one side, we have deep analyses of Hill's 1930s philosophy, detailing his psychological frameworks for wealth creation. On the other, we have comprehensive biographical and business texts, outlining the exact history of Mateschitz's journey, his early harsh economic frictions, and his unconventional marketing architecture. Okay, let's unpack this. Did Dietrich Mateschitz essentially use exactly this Depression-era architecture of Napoleon Hill to build a modern global monopoly? What's fascinating here is that when you overlay Mateschitz's timeline onto Hill's theoretical framework, you begin to realize that true entrepreneurial success is rarely about having an intrinsically superior product. In many ways, the product itself is just a vehicle. The real engine is this synthesis of almost irrational vision, extreme psychological resilience, and, honestly, the engineering of faith. Let's start with the birth of this engine. Because before you have a supply chain, before you worry about unit economics or market share, there must be a psychological anchor. Hill called this fundamental step desire. However, he is very careful to distinguish this from a mere wish. This isn't a casual, "it would be nice if I had my own company" situation. It is a burning, definite purpose. Yes, and Hill perfectly illustrates this in his work with the story of Edwin C. Barnes. This is arguably the cornerstone of Hill's entire philosophy on initial momentum. So, Barnes was a man with absolutely zero capital. Zero. But he had this obsessive, singular desire to work with Thomas Edison. And the crucial point is, not for Thomas Edison. Right. Exactly. Not as a janitor or an entry-level clerk, but as a business partner with him. Barnes couldn't even afford a standard passenger train ticket. So he literally hopped a freight train to New Jersey, walked into Edison's office, and simply announced his intention. That takes serious guts. It does. And he eventually succeeded because he systematically eliminated every safety net. He burned his bridges, leaving no way to retreat into his own psychology. It was either a partnership with Edison or nothing. And if we look at Dietrich Mateschitz, we see exactly the same psychological alchemy, just ported to 1982. Mateschitz was a marketing manager traveling to Thailand for a German toothpaste manufacturer. He was suffering from debilitating jet lag and discovered a local syrup called Krating Dang. It means red water bowl, exactly. It was a non-carbonated, flat tonic sold in pharmacies and gas stations, primarily used by Thai truck drivers and factory workers to endure grueling night shifts. So, it was essentially a pure utility liquid. I mean, there was no brand prestige attached to it. None. Zero. But this is where Hill's concept of a definite purpose kicks in and bends reality. A standard businessman might have looked at that syrup and thought, maybe I can import this and sell it to long-haul truckers in Munich. as a new side business. Right. It could be thought of as a logical next step, but Mateschitz didn't do that. He developed this massive, seemingly irrational vision to create a premium energy drink market in Europe. You have to put this in context. In the 1980s, the energy drink category literally did not exist in the Western world. Man, he wasn't formulating a strategy to capture market share. He was trying to bring an entirely new sector into existence from nothing in the beverage industry. This reminds me of another historical example Hill relies on regarding Henry Ford. Ford decided he wanted to build a V8 engine and wanted the entire 8-cylinder engine block cast in a single piece of metal. The famous V8 story. Yes, he ordered his engineers to do it, and they told him plainly that it was scientifically and physically impossible. They literally thought he was crazy. But Ford didn't care about their engineering reality. He told them to produce it anyway, and he forced them to stay on the project until they finally invented a new casting method. Mateschitz did exactly the same in the consumer market. He famously told skeptics, "The market doesn't exist unless we create it." Connecting this to the big picture, the lesson for you, the entrepreneur or founder listening right now, lies in the specific psychological mechanism operating beneath the surface. Hill defines this mechanism as autosuggestion. When you lock on to a definite purpose with enough intensity, it fundamentally alters your subconscious cognitive filtering. Wait, autosuggestion sounds a bit like toxic positivity. Is Hill just advocating a 1930s version of fake it until you make it? Or is there a real, rigorous psychological mechanism here? No, that's a great distinction to make. This isn't toxic positivity. It's cognitive recalibration. In modern neuroscience, we can compare this to programming your reticular activating system. Your brain processes millions of bits of information per second and filters out almost everything that isn't directly related to your survival or your primary focus. Right, otherwise we'd go insane. So, by using autosuggestion, by constantly reinforcing a singular, massive goal, you reprogram that filter. Mateschitz's mind became so completely saturated with the goal of creating this global energy category that his brain stopped perceiving the absence of an existing market as a threat. Where traditional beverage executives saw a terrifying void with zero demand, his auto-suggested mind perceived a blank canvas with zero competition. He effectively restructured his own risk perception. But perceiving a blank canvas is one thing. Actually painting on it is another. Because a grand vision doesn't meet manufacturing costs, what happens when that unstoppable auto-suggested vision hits the immovable object of consumer disgust? This is the inevitable next stage. Vision without extreme friction is just a dream. This brings us to a concept Hill wrote extensively about, the crucible of persistence. Hill warns his readers that failure is a trickster with a deep, ironic sense of timing. Oh, it loves to show up at the worst possible moment. It really does. It loves to present catastrophic friction at the exact point where a breakthrough is statistically likely. Hill argues that what society generally categorizes as failure is almost always just temporary defeat, meaning you just need to adapt. Yes, it simply means your current plan of execution is mathematically or strategically flawed. It does not mean your overall vision is invalid. And Mateschitz's initial launch process is a masterclass in managing that temporary defeat. Let's look at the brutal economic reality of Red Bull's early days. Mateschitz officially partners with the Thai creator of the syrup, Yoovidhya. Okay, they each pool $500,000 of their own capital, each taking a 49% stake, leaving 2% to Chalio's son. So they are all in, completely all in. They spend years just fighting through Austrian bureaucratic health regulations to get the ingredients approved. They adapt the formula for the Western palate, primarily by adding carbonation. Finally, they launch in Austria in 1987, and the result is a total disaster. Losing $1 to $2 million on a self-funded beverage in the late 80s, that is the kind of pressure that usually breaks a founding team. You put out a product, and the objective quantitative data from your focus groups tells you it sucks. The feedback was universally hostile. Consumers complained that it tasted like medicine, that it was too sweet, that the mouthfeel was wrong. The company was burning through cash fast, so the data literally told him his product was terrible and he was losing millions. At what point does persistence for a new entrepreneur simply turn into delusion? If the market is literally rejecting the physical product you are selling, isn't persistence just an ego play? That raises a crucial question, and it's the exact razor's edge every founder walks. How do you tell the difference between visionary persistence and the sunk cost fallacy? Right, because when you're in it, it's hard to tell. Very hard. However, Hill's framework actually provides the diagnostic tool for this. If you are willing to fiercely protect the purpose while ruthlessly adapting the plan, it isn't delusion. Mateschitz looked at the disastrous data and realized something counterintuitive. The liquid inside the can wasn't the problem. The context surrounding the can was the problem. He realized he couldn't fight Coca-Cola on taste, so he had to fight them on psychology. Absolutely. He refused to accept what Hill calls failure consciousness. Most executives would have run back to the lab, diluted the recipe, added more sugar, and tried to make it taste like a traditional cola to please the focus groups. Of course, Mateschitz didn't touch the formula. Instead, he decided to weaponize the strange taste. He used the cognitive dissonance of pricing by putting this strange-tasting medicinal liquid into a small, sleek, silver and blue can and charging a significant premium price for it. He changed the consumer's psychological framework. That's genius. The subconscious assumption became, if it tastes this intense and costs this much, it must have an incredibly powerful functional benefit. He bypassed their taste buds and targeted their perception of value. But you can't pull off a psychological pivot of this magnitude alone, especially when you're running out of capital. To engineer this kind of shift, you need what Hill considered his most vital mechanism, the mastermind. Yes, the Mastermind Principle is arguably Hill's most enduring contribution to business theory. This is where things get really interesting. Hill defines the mastermind as the coordination of knowledge and effort of two or more people who work toward a definite purpose in a spirit of perfect harmony. It's essentially synergy, yes, but deeper. He had this fascinating theory that it works almost like a battery circuit. No two minds ever come together without thereby creating a third, invisible, intangible force. If you connect multiple batteries, you increase the voltage. When you're facing a temporary defeat, you need that increased voltage to break the cognitive deadlock. And Mateschitz's early alliances perfectly embody the mechanics of a high-functioning mastermind. His first anchor was the partnership with Yoovidhya, which provided the operational foundation and vital initial capital. But the big pivot, the adaptation of the plan, the thing that would ultimately save the business, required a completely different frequency of thought. Mateschitz brought in a close friend, an advertising agency owner named Johannes Kastner. And it's clear from the sources that Kastner was put in an incredibly difficult spot. He wasn't just designing a logo. He had to invent the language for a non-existent category. It was an agonizing process. Kastner went through iteration after iteration, trying to find a tagline that could simultaneously capture functional energy, mental alertness, and a premium lifestyle. He hit a wall over and over again. At one point, they were on the verge of abandoning the branding work altogether because the friction was so high. But this is the crucible of the mastermind. It's not just two people agreeing in a boardroom. It's pushing each other to the absolute limit for the sake of that shared purpose. Late one night, after exhausting every traditional marketing angle, Kastner finally birthed the legendary phrase, "Red Bull gives you wings." That single sentence completely removed the need to explain the ingredients. It stopped being about taurine and caffeine and started being about human potential. Exactly. But having a brilliant slogan doesn't solve the distribution problem. They had this premium concept, but the traditional gatekeepers of the beverage industry, the massive supermarket chains and distribution networks wanted nothing to do with it. Shelf space in the ADS was completely monopolized by the giant cola conglomerates. So, applying Hill's concept of organized planning, the Mastermind Group executed a brilliantly unconventional, asymmetric strategy. They realized that fighting a land war for supermarket shelf space against legacy companies was a guaranteed failure. Yeah, they would have just been crushed, totally crushed. The unit economics of traditional TV advertising were too high, and the conversion rate for an unknown product category was too low. It was as if they realized the front door of the exclusive nightclub was heavily guarded by giants like Coca-Cola and Pepsi. So, instead of trying to fight the bouncers, they paid the dishwasher kids and snuck in through the kitchen. They bypassed traditional distribution models entirely and invented guerrilla marketing. They took the product directly to the end user in the highest energy environments. They targeted opinion leaders, recruiting popular and charismatic university students. The Red Bull Wing Team was born. They bought fleets of Mini Coopers and VW Beetles, strapped oversized Red Bull cans to the roofs, and had them drive around college campuses. They gave out free cases to DJs, bands, and athletes. They seeded the product into elite university parties and underground clubs. The mechanism here is pure social proof and engineered scarcity. If you see the coolest kid on campus drinking from this weirdly shaped, small silver can, it instantly bypasses the traditional advertising barriers that a billboard could never cross. Exactly. It created localized, high-trust network effects. And the clincher was that they positioned the product perfectly within the nightlife scene, where it naturally evolved into a premium mixer for cocktails. Oh, that's huge. Suddenly, a product that failed miserably in a sterile focus group room became the most sought-after commodity in a crowded nightclub. By controlling the context, they controlled the value. And once that strategy cracked the market open, Mateschitz did something that completely defied standard corporate logic. When revenues finally began to scale, he didn't just pull the profits to please shareholders or build a massive corporate reserve. No, he did the opposite. He reinvested a staggering, unprecedented percentage of his gross margins back into the vibe of the brand. This is where Mateschitz takes Hill's principles to a global level. He realized the definite purpose wasn't reaching a specific quarterly revenue target. The purpose was to own the concept of vitality. Right. He started pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into extreme sports sponsorships, cliff diving, freestyle motocross, the monumental Stratos space jump where Felix Baumgartner broke the sound barrier in a freefall, and he bought a struggling Formula One team, transforming it into Red Bull Racing, which came to dominate the track, winning multiple world championships against established automotive giants like Ferrari and Mercedes. He founded Red Bull Media House, creating feature films, magazines, and TV networks like Service TV. He built an ecosystem where the drink was just the entry ticket. What stands out to me about this final evolution of the company is the realization that he stopped selling a physical commodity and started monetizing an emotion. Napoleon Hill wrote extensively that positive emotions, enthusiasm, and vitality are absolute prerequisites for sustainable success. Mateschitz figured out how to literally manufacture and can that vitality. That's a great way to put it. He realized people weren't buying a blend of B vitamins and sugar. They were buying a piece of that extreme, limit-pushing identity. Those somewhat abstract psychological states Hill wrote about in the 1930s, adrenaline, focus, the defiance of limits, he took those and made them the core functional benefit of a modern brand. He didn't build a beverage company. He built a media and lifestyle syndicate that just happened to fund itself by selling caffeinated syrup. We've covered a massive amount of historical and psychological ground here, merging Depression-era theory with a modern billion-dollar reality. Let's synthesize the specific, counterintuitive insights for the founders and entrepreneurs listening. Looking at Mateschitz through the lens of Hill, I boil it down to 3 operational imperatives. First, define a purpose that bends your reality. If you're just trying to capture 2% of an existing market, you'll likely quit at the first sign of serious friction. Absolutely. Your vision needs to be vast enough to change your cognitive filtering to make you see a canvas where others see a void. Second, change the plan, not the purpose. When objective data tells you your product is failing, the amateur instinct is to change the product to please the critics. Mateschitz's approach was to change the consumer's context, completely reframe the environment. Right. If they hate the taste, monetize that strange taste by raising the price and changing the packaging. Don't dilute your vision. Reframe the environment. And third, Engineer a mastermind to break through cognitive deadlocks. You cannot pull off these massive psychological pivots alone. You need a Chelio for the operational anchor and a Kastner for the translational genius. The friction of high-level minds colliding is what generates the strategies that bypass traditional gatekeepers. So, what does all of this mean? It proves that the fundamental mechanics of massive success are remarkably systematic and surprisingly timeless. They really are. The exact same psychological architecture required to survive the economic collapse of the 1930s is the exact same architecture required to disrupt the monolithic corporate monopolies of the modern era. Technology changes, distribution channels change, but human psychology remains exactly the same. I want to leave you with one final lingering thought for you to explore on your own. Napoleon Hill wrote that thoughts, when deeply believed, have a magnetic tendency to transform into their physical counterparts. Dietrich Mateschitz took an abstract emotion, human potential, and literally turned it into a $1.9 billion physical infrastructure. That's incredible. But the friction point in today's landscape is this. As an entrepreneur operating right now, you are immersed in a culture that absolutely worships data. We are taught to A/B test every variable, to follow analytics blindly, to let algorithms dictate our next move. But if Dietrich Mateschitz had listened to the initial dataset, if he had bowed to the metrics of that 1,987 focus group, Red Bull would have been quietly left for dead before it even reached a second production run. It simply wouldn't exist. So, as we move faster into the age of AI and hyper-analytics, is the ultimate untouchable competitive advantage actually a founder's ability to maintain an almost irrational, reality-bending faith in a vision that the data says is impossible? If an Excel spreadsheet says no, but your definite purpose says yes, who ultimately commands the market? Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Take these frameworks, cultivate that irrational faith, and apply them to whatever massive project you're building next. Because at the end of the day, there is no clean and simple formula for shaking the world. You just have to be willing to manage the friction, engineer your own context, and build the market yourself. See you next time on Catalyst Power.